The Broken Blueprint, Part 3. Doubts Overwhelm Magan. By 1926, Magan felt locked in. When you choose to follow the world standard, soon others are the master, and you are the slave. During the late 20s, the fad for surveys, reports, and questionnaires was developing in medical as well as other educational circles. Dr. Magan complained of the trend and said he longed for the day when certain officials would not be butting in all the time, a hope that many other educators were to express in the next 3 decades. The questionnaires and requests for reports were almost beyond count. Neff, for God and CME, page 268, quoting Magan letter to N.P. Colwell, head of the AMA Accreditation Committee, April 30, 1925. In 1926, Magan wrote to Holwell that, in earlier decades he was strongly opposed to degrees. He, Magan, now felt that we were locked in and knew not how to escape. During the 90s and earlier years of this century, I contended very earnestly that we did not need these long courses of studies, that we should not give degrees, and that the more simple our schools were kept, the better. But as I saw it in those days, a very considerable number of our brethren were anxious that our students should have degrees, that we should have long courses of study, and that we should teach a number of subjects not really necessary. I will do everything I can, and believe it is right that I should, in order to circumvent the machinations of the North Central Association. But I will give degrees and do certain things before I will ever submit to shutting our schools up. Although you know that in my heart of hearts I am opposed to all that kind of stuff. But we better do that than to shut up altogether. Magan to Warren Howell, January 13, 1926. Was there no God in heaven who could give his earthly children a better way? Had we come this far on one path and must now change to a different one? Because it had become more important to align ourselves with the world rather than train our people to give the final message to all the world? The key to Magan's error lies in the above statement. If Loma Linda totally walked away from degrees and accreditation, the school would not close. It would return to what it was doing in 1906 to 1910, teaching blueprint medical missionary work. While pressure was being applied to send our teachers to the universities so they could become qualified, in 1926 it was suggested that it would be more beneficial to send a teacher to the mission field to get a vision of the world's need than to send him to a university. Review, March 18, 1926. Magan regretfully reviews the past. With great sadness, and well aware that history was repeating in his own time, Percy Magan reviewed the trend in our schools at the turn of the century. As time went on, our schools, to my mind, became more worldly. Long courses of study became the order of the day. Without in the slightest way reflecting on anyone who took part in this, I might fix the time when this movement began to take definite shape as in the 90s. You will remember that during the 90s there were a large amount of testimonies from Sister White sent to the old Battle Creek College complaining of the long courses of study, the number of subjects which were taught, and indirectly in regard to holding the students so that they might obtain degrees. See Unpublished Testimonies, pages 48 to 59, 93 to 104, and Fundamentals of Education, FE, 338, 356, 359, and 451, and CT 374 and 7T 281. At that time, I contended very earnestly that we did not need these long courses of study, that we should not give degrees, and that the more simple our schools were kept, and the more we kept away from worldly customs and appearances, the better. I was not the only one by any means in this movement. Out of it grew our church schools and intermediate schools, and a more or less definite revival on the subject of education among our people. You may remember that when a new corporation was formed about the year 1901 to hold the property of Emmanuel Missionary College, the charter was drawn under the Benevolent Act and not under the Educational Act of the State of Michigan. The great reason for this was to prevent the giving of degrees by the new school, as degrees could not be given under the Benevolent Act of the state of Michigan. The men who founded Emmanuel Missionary College had in mind that it should live up in every particular to its name, and that a simple missionary training for men and women desiring to give themselves to mission work for Prince Emmanuel should be its constant and irrevocable aim and object. You may remember that it was seriously considered making Emmanuel Missionary College a school where only those desiring training for our work should be taken. Time went on, however, and the founders were eliminated. Then a movement began for long courses of studies, degrees, etc. And, in the process of time, 1910, a new charter was taken out under the Educational Act and the old one was done away with the avowed purpose of this being so the school could give degrees and in other ways conform to worldly requirements. Percy T. Magan, letter to Warren Howell, January 13, 1926. Magan crushed almost no missionaries. By 1927, it had become obvious to Magan, after all the work and expense carried out in changing our educational and medical work from the head to the tail in order to graduate physicians with recognized degrees, that few of those Loma Linda graduates wanted to become missionaries. The entire changeover had been for naught. In 1927, Magan wrote this to Dr. Owen S. Barrett. I was very much pained to see in a recent number of the Review a back-page note advertising for doctors to go into the work. It does seem too bad that, after all that Providence, toil and treasure have done to build up the school, such a small percentage of its output seems to be available for the one thing above all others for which it has been founded, gospel medical missionary work. I feel that the situation is heartbreaking. I have given 11 of the best years of my life to endeavoring to put the school on a solid foundation, but I am now seriously raising the question in my own mind as to whether I cannot do more if I went out into some humble place in the work than I can by staying here when we see so little fruit of our labors. P.T. Magan to O.S. Barrett, letter dated April 3, 1927. As early as 1924, this problem was becoming serious. Few graduating physicians from the professional training program at Loma Linda wanted to go to foreign mission stations. Indeed, just as in the years since, most of them preferred to open private practices in California. There was a constant problem of getting young doctors to the mission field after they had volunteered for service. At the 1924 Autumn Council, Dr. Magan pleaded with the delegates to enlarge and reorganize the medical department of the General Conference with the aim of using CME graduates in a more efficient medical missionary program. When conference officials in many sections of the United States complained that graduating physicians would not settle in their cities and that too many graduates were remaining in Southern California, Dr. Percy analyzed the issues. Merlin Neff, For God and CME, page 250. You can visit our churches all over Northern, Central, and Southern California, and you will find loads of dentists and physicians. A revealing example of how far, in their thinking, CME students had strayed from the blueprint was shown by their delight at Magan's efforts to bring them honor and prestige. In 1932, he, Magan, was appointed a member of the California State Board of Medical Examiners, and the junior class congratulated him on his untiring efforts to bring honor and prestige to the institution. Neff, For God and CME, page 273, quoting letter of junior class of 1933 to Magan, January 26, 1933. On one hand, Magan had clear evidence that Loma Linda was accomplishing little by providing AMA-type instruction to the students. Because the blueprint, which had been so carefully followed from 1905 through 1909, had been abandoned, graduates no longer wanted to be missionaries. On the other hand, Magan was working as hard as he could to bring our other colleges down to the worldly standards that Loma Linda was on. He felt locked in and did not know what else to do. In 1927, he wrote, "I will be very glad when the time comes when I can honorably lay down my burdens here. The place is no easy one, and the only thing that has held me this long is that I do not want to be a coward and run away." Magan to J.W. Christian, April 8, 1927. A poor reason to keep what he was doing.